All right, today, boys and girls, we're going to talk about the reading strategy of comprehension. I understand what I read, and I'm able to write about my reading. Today, we're going to focus on the problem and solution in a story. I want you to focus on the problem, which is what goes wrong, which could be a challenge or an obstacle, something that gets in the way. And the solution is how the problem is fixed or solved. For example, it says Sam hit his head and got a big bump. Well, that's the problem, right? He hit his head and he got a big bump. Well, how was that solved? How did he fix it or solve the problem? He got an ice pack and put it on his head. The problem and solution is kind of like puzzle pieces putting together. The problem and solution must fit together. We're going to read a story today, and it talks about the problem of a little girl and her family. I want you to listen to the story. A chair for my mother. Let's look and see what happens to this little girl and her family. Remember, you're looking for the problem and the solution. Think about the problem. What challenges is the little girl facing or the family? Or is there an obstacle? Let's read A Chair for My Mother. Remember, sit like you're supposed to, build your stamina, and pay attention.
My mother works as a waitress in the Blue Tile Diner. After school, sometimes I go to meet her there. Then her boss, Josephine, gives me a job too. I wash the salts and peppers and fill the ketchups. One time, I peeled all the onions for the onion soup. When I finish, Josephine says, "Good work, honey," and pays me. And every time, I put half of my money into the jar. It takes a long time to fill a jar this big. Every day, when my mother comes home from work, I take down the jar. My mama empties all her change from tips out of her purse for me to count. Then we push all of the coins into the jar. Sometimes my mom is laughing when she comes home from work. Sometimes she's so tired she falls asleep while I count the money out into piles. Some days she has lots of tips. Some days she has only a little. Then she looks worried. But each evening, every single shiny coin goes into the jar. We sit in the kitchen to count the tips. Usually, Grandma sits with us too. While we count, she likes to hum. Often she has money in her old leather wallet for us. Whenever she gets a good bargain on tomatoes or bananas or something she buys, she puts by the savings and they go into the jar. When we can't get a single other coin into the jar, we are going to take out all the money and go and buy a chair. Yes, a chair. A wonderful, beautiful, fat, soft armchair. We will get one covered in velvet with roses all over it. We are going to get the best chair in the whole world. That is because...
Now, so far, it seems like this little girl, they're very smart because they're saving their money. Doesn't really seem like a problem, right? But now let's take a look at this part of the story. Pay attention because this is a very important part of maybe what the problem is.
That is because our old chairs burned up. There was a big fire in our other house. All our chairs burned. So did our sofa, and so did everything else. That wasn't such a long time ago. My mother and I were coming home from buying new shoes. I had new sandals. She had new pumps. We were walking to our house from the bus. We were looking at everyone's tulips. She was saying she liked red tulips, and I was saying I liked yellow ones. Then we came to our block. Right outside our house stood two big fire engines. I could see lots of smoke. Tall orange flames came out of the roof. All the neighbors stood in a bunch across the street. Mama grabbed my hand and we ran. My Uncle Sandy saw us and ran to us. Mama yelled, "Where's Mother?" I yelled, "Where's my Grandma?" My Aunt Ida waved and shouted, "She's here, she's okay, don't worry." Grandma was all right. Our cat was safe too, though it took a while to find her. But everything else in our whole house was spoiled. What was left of the house was turned to charcoal and ashes. We went to stay with my mother's sister, Aunt Ida, and Uncle Sandy. Then we were able to move into the apartment downstairs. We painted the walls yellow. The floors were all shiny, but the rooms were very empty. The first day we moved in, the neighbors brought pizza and cake and ice cream, and they brought a lot of other things too. The family across the street brought a table and 3 kitchen chairs. The very old man next door gave us a bed from when his children were little. My other grandpa brought us his beautiful rug. My mother's other sister, Sally, had made us red and white curtains. Mama's boss, Josephine, brought pots and pans, silverware and dishes. My cousin brought me her own stuffed bear. Everyone clapped when my grandma made a speech. "You are all the kindest people," she said, "and we thank you very, very much. It's lucky we're young and can start all over."
So now it seems like everything is starting to get better. They have found a new place to stay, and other neighbors and their family are bringing them things. But here we have the jar full of money. And if you remember, what were they saving for? Turn to your partner and remind each other, what were they saving for? If you said they were saving for that chair, you're exactly right. So let's think about, there is a problem. Sounded like the problem was what? The house burning down, and they had an empty apartment. But that was solved due to all the kindness of the family members and the neighbors. But still, there must be something, because they're trying to save money for a chair. Let's finish and see just what exactly the problem was and if they solved it.
That was last year, but we still have no sofa and no big chairs. When Mama comes home, her feet hurt. "There's no good place for me to take a load off my feet," she says. When Grandma wants to sit back and hum and cut up potatoes, she has to get as comfortable as she can on a hard kitchen chair. So that is how come Mama brought home the biggest jar she could find at the diner, and all the coins started to go into the jar. Now the jar is too heavy for me to lift down. Uncle Sandy gave me a quarter. He had to boost me up so I could put it in. After supper, Mama and Grandma and I stood in front of the jar. Well, I never would have believed it, but I guess it's full, Mama said. My mother brought home little paper wrappers for the nickels and the dimes and the quarters. I counted them all out and wrapped them all up. On my mother's day off, we took all the coins to the bank. The bank exchanged them for $10 bills. Then we took the bus downtown to shop for our chair. We shopped through 4 furniture stores. We tried out big chairs and smaller ones, high chairs and low chairs, soft chairs and harder ones. Grandma said she felt like Goldilocks and the 3 bears trying out all the chairs. Finally, we found the chair we were all dreaming of, and the money in the jar was enough to pay for it. We called Aunt Ida and Uncle Sandy. They came right down in their pickup truck to drive the chair home for us. They knew we couldn't wait for it to be delivered. I tried out our chair in the back of the truck. Mama wouldn't let me sit there while we drove, but they let me sit in it while they carried it up to the door. We set the chair right beside the window with the red and white curtains. Grandma and Mama and I all sat in it while Aunt Ida took our picture. Now Grandma sits in it and talks with people going by in the daytime. Mama sits down and watches the news on TV when she comes home from her job. After supper, I sit with her, and she can reach right up and turn out the light if I fall asleep in her lap.
Okay, boys and girls, now that you have listened to A Chair for My Mother, I want you to reflect on what the problem was in the story and the solution. You are going to get this worksheet, problem and solution. Remember how I said earlier that problem and solutions are kind of like puzzle pieces. You usually have one and you usually have the other, and they somehow connect. So I want you to turn to a partner, and then I want you to discuss what the problem was in the story and what the solution was. Remember what was happening through the whole entire story. I'm going to give you just a minute. All right, now, I want you to turn around and sit like you're supposed to. Here's what I need you to do. Focus on the problem and solution for A Chair for My Mother. Let's get started.